And welcome back to another episode of Pokemon Knowledge. On today's episode, we're just going to talk about the greed in Pokemon. And we'll, as a group, try to figure out, is it the individual collector, the investor, the flipper, the retail seller who has a direct relationship with the distributor, who is getting their product far below MSRP and charging, absorbent amounts of money? And there's a lot to talk about when it comes to the greed, especially in Pokemon right now. We're seeing greed that we have never seen before. And this hobby is relatively old. It's been around for over 2 decades. But what we're seeing right now is definitely next level. So for this episode, because we are talking about greed, I think we have to pick an order to talk about these, because if we're bouncing around too much in this video, I think we'll lose a lot of sight. So we're going to have an order. So we'll start off with collectors, investors, then we'll go to flippers, scalpers, and then we'll talk about companies or people who have direct relationships with suppliers and are getting product below MSRP direct from the distributor. So, like I said, with that order, first we'll do the collectors and investors, because this is more on an individual basis, person to person, and this hobby does not exist without collectors and investors. And I've said in other videos, collectors and investors who have been in the hobby for a few years are all doing very well right now, and it would be almost impossible to be doing poorly. You got to think about all the products that came out in the last 20 years. If you had some of them, none of them went down. And yeah, it's really hard to pinpoint products that did very poorly, whether you were dealing with individual cards or sealed product. So the problem with the greed with the collectors and the investors right now is I'm starting to notice people who might not have like a ton of money or might not be like super rich. Their collections are starting to accumulate so much value that they're not really 100% sure how to manage those collections. And because they are the collectors and the investors, they're two things. One, they're probably pretty well-rounded when it comes to the hobby, or had a leg up on a lot of the new collectors. And the second thing is, they are collectors, so they're least likely to sell their collection because they're more emotionally involved or emotionally invested in it. So they want the highest dollar amount. Now, the problem that we're seeing with the greed of these collectors is a lot of times I'm watching collectors who are very knowledgeable of the market. And for 100% transparency, before I say this next comment, I need to let you guys know that I have noticed I have made this mistake a few times in the past, and I don't even know if you call it a mistake, but I've done this myself. And it's where you're able to see undervalued gaps in the market, but you consciously know that those gaps shouldn't hold a ton of value, but you decide to capitalize on that and make money off of it, knowing that it might not be in the best intention of the buyer, and it's only in the best intention of you as the seller. So there's definitely a lot of greed that goes on in the hobby with stuff like that. So I think, an example of that would be what I've done. I've graded tons of cards in the past, which I consider low-value cards. I knew if I sent them away for grading, I'd pay a couple bucks to have more or less worthless cards graded, and I'd instantly be able to sell those cards at a premium. And it probably wasn't in the best interest for a lot of the buyers, because a lot of these cards you can just pick up raw for very, very cheap and just send those cards away for grading yourself. Listen, if you want PSA 6s or PSA 7s, you can do that all day. You could go pick up tons of bulk lots of cards and just, doesn't even really matter condition at that point. Send them away, pay to have them graded, and then you will have those cards in your collection. And I felt that I was taking advantage of people, so maybe that's the greed that I've seen myself do. Next, we'll talk about the flippers. And often, flippers do get a little confused with scalpers, and there's a difference. So what a flipper, in my opinion, is, and let me know down in the comments if you think it's something other, what I always consider a flipper is, very similar to a lot of the actions I have made in the hobby in the past, where you'll go out, you'll buy some product, you'll open it up, you'll have multiples of cards, you'll send all those cards away for grading, you'll keep whatever the highest grade is, you'll put that in your personal collection, you sell all your duplicates and your triplicates. By doing that, you're able to do a few things. You could potentially pay for the product that you bought for, so you're now a collector for free, or by selling all your duplicates and triplicates, you're offsetting the grading costs for the cards you keep. And also you'll see flippers go buy sealed product to a MSRP, flip it, take that money, and buy something in their collection. So what they're doing is they're using their knowledge of the hobby to make money in the hobby, but at the same time, they're still reinvesting back into the hobby. So that's what I consider a flipper. And sure, I guess your definition could be much different. And I don't want flippers to be confused with scalpers. I think where the greed comes into play with flippers is that they use this knowledge and this experience to go in, clear out shelves, because they have the experience with reselling product. And the problem is once you get a lot of this experience and you understand the channels and how to quickly find good deals and sell product for a lot of money, the more experience you have, the more liquidity you find Pokemon has. If you don't have a lot of channels, you will believe that Pokemon is very tough to sell on the secondary market. And that's not the case, but it could seem like that. There's almost these artificial barriers set up at entry to push a lot of people away from doing that. But the more experience you get doing it and the more comfortable you feel, you just, again, to reiterate earlier, the liquidity becomes much easier. But that's where the greed of the flippers take place, because now the flippers' greed gets so strong that they're going to do whatever it takes to advance their personal collection, and they could care less about anyone else. Their primary goal just becomes all about me, and they could not care less about you. So that is definitely greed. Again, for the millionth time, we're talking about the greed in this video. We're not talking about any of the merits. That's what you do down in the comments below. Go ahead, have a field day. I think next, when it comes to greed, that's when the scalpers come in. And the scalpers, from the outside looking in, may seem to have a lot of the same characteristics as a flipper, but in fact, they don't care about the hobby at all. The only thing that they care about is dollars. They will go in, they will clear out shelves, and their only goal is to flip that product as fast as they possibly can to make a buck. And we've all been there. We've all stood in line at Target. We've all stood in line at Walmart waiting for the restocks to happen. And you see those people in the line. And, everyone kind of just talks to each other while you're in line. And you could hear those people when they talk about the hobby, when they talk about the sets. They have no freaking clue about anything. They have 100% zero care about the hobby, care about the sets, care about Pokemon. They could care less. If Pokemon exploded tomorrow and evaporated and ceased to be, They would not care as long as they weren't sitting on any product. They do not care about the hobby. They only care about money. They want nothing to do with Pokemon. And you'll see them, they buy everything. They buy baseball, they buy basketball, they buy whatever. Anything they can make a buck on, they will. And they could care less about the actual collector or the investor or, everyone says, what about the children? They could care less about the children. Again, I don't know how many times I got to say this. This is a greed video. We're only talking about the greed. If you want to, justify scalpers, I have a comment section down below. Go to town. But we're just focusing on greed for today's episode. And then the last group we're going to talk about, and trust me, I purposely waited till later in the video to talk about this because this is going to be the point that upsets the most people. And hopefully all the people who didn't enjoy this video have already stopped listening. But now we're going to talk about the companies that have direct relationships with distributors. And I'm really hesitant to do this. But we're also going to talk a little bit about, social influencers and other Poke YouTubers who do use, their community in a negative way. And they use them for profiteering. And sometimes, not all the times, I got to be real careful because, I don't want to say things that I can't take back. But they use a lot of their, channels to pawn off a lot of overpriced products on people, which, no matter how you break it down, is very greedy. And again, I gotta be very careful doing this because this is a very sensitive subject for a lot of people. So when you have the actual online retailers who are not big box retail, but they do have relationships with distributors, whether they have relationships with just one distributor, possibly multiple, and they are now getting product below MSRP. Yes, the profit margins that a lot of these companies are making are not the same as big box retail. Like Walmart and Target have distributor license through MJ Holdings and these real big guys, so they get a ton of product. They have, the price they're paying for packs and ETBs and collection boxes and stuff is way different than the price that a lot of these smaller online retailers are paying. So the profit margins are much higher. But with that said, online retail companies often will charge whatever the going market rate is. And the truth is, going market rate, especially for brand new product, the price is crazy. And, an example we'll just give right now, because it was the most recent set put out before this video, depending on when you're listening to this video, the most recent set was Shining Fates. Yeah, in a week or two, we're going to have Battle Styles, but right now, the only set that has actually been released recently is Shining Fates. ETBs, through a lot of these people, were pre-order sales of $150. That is highway robbery. And I've said it in so many of my other videos. You need to get your Pokemon product at MSRP. And I understand that can be very hard. And I understand that these companies are kind of stuck in a rock and a hard place, right? Because if they just sell their product at MSRP, all those scalpers and maybe the flippers are going to come in and they're just going to buy up all their product and then they're going to sell it on the secondary market for a markup. Yeah, I understand that argument. Totally makes sense. Can't really argue with it because it's true. Look at what happens with Pokemon Center. I mean, how many times does Pokemon Center do a pre-order and then you go on eBay and people already are saying, confirm pre-order, here's my packing slip from Pokemon Center as soon as it happens. So yeah, we know that that is definitely a realized thing that happens daily. But because of what this video is, it still is greed by these guys. Because the problem is a large majority of their clientele is probably not scalpers. A large percentage of their clientele probably are collectors or investors. So they are really hurting those people by forcing them to buy product well above MSRP. Just think of Shining Fates. If an investor, an investor should never pay over MSRP. But let's just say, for the argument of this video, an investor did decide to pay $120 or $150 for an ETB of Shining Fates at pre-order. That ETB will now have to go up 100 to 200% in value for that investor just to break even. Do you know what kind of returns 100 and 200% are on different Pokemon product? Yeah. In the world we live in today, we're seeing that happen overnight on a lot of products. But on a lot of products in the long term, that is a very lofty goal. So you're going to tie up your money for a long, long time. And, these companies are using these relationships with distributors, and they've more or less, by charging a huge absorbent price to a lot of these collectors. And I don't think they're selling these products to well-rounded collectors or well-rounded or like investors in Pokemon. I think they're taking advantage of the undereducated or new to the hobby buyer. And that is greed. That's all that is. It's just greed. You are taking advantage of people who don't know any better. And you should be ashamed of yourself for doing that. And you can justify it all you want. And trust me, I get it. I get the justification. But at the end of the day, all that is very greedy. And I don't know, how it can't be looked at as greed. Because, again, please go down below and write a comment and tell me why I'm wrong. We have to talk about greed for this video. There's only one way to do it. You talk about greed. Sorry. And then you have YouTubers. I hate doing this because I'm trying to be kind of a YouTuber, I guess. I don't know if I really am much of a YouTuber with my subscriber count. But a lot of the, PokeTubers out there do take advantage of a lot of their listeners, because a lot of their listeners are passionate about the hobby. They may be returning to the hobby. They may not have, a good foundation in the hobby, might not understand like product trends or, I think probably the biggest thing is they don't understand like the different avenues to go to find product at MSRP. And you think about people like, I forget his name, like Pokemon TCG drops on Instagram. That's like one of the, there's a million of those. He's not on Instagram, he's on Twitter. He's Pokemon TCG, he drops on Twitter. And he's constantly like, anytime Walmart or Target or Best Buy or GameStop or any of these guys, Pokemon Center, anytime they drop new, think of all the people who just recently got all the Shining Fates at Target, like he would drop tweets pretty much saying, hey, go on to walmart.com or go on the Target before they're sold out and pick up Shining Fates at MSRP. There's a million of those different Twitter accounts and stuff. But then you got people who are in Discords who pay for that service, which that drives me nuts too. Please do not join any of these Discord groups where you're not paying for information that's readily available throughout the internet. But, then you have people who are in these groups. They are threatening these other people who give this information out for free and blah, blah, blah. They talk about like going to people's houses and threatening them in like real life threats because they're letting out quote unquote like Pokemon trade secrets. Listen, guys, this stuff is not new. Like, just understand all this stuff is out there. These Twitter accounts exist. These Discord groups exist. They're free. You can find the free stuff. Do the due diligence on your own. Go find all these guys who leak all this stuff. But yeah, here we are in the modern day where we're not allowed to talk about this stuff anymore. Like, it's got to be a secret. Guess what? Secrets are over. You gotta stop. We gotta all stop being greedy, but that's where we're at with greed. But anyways, he got these YouTubers who every time they make a video, they funnel people to their personal websites, and they mask their YouTube channels as like a beneficial thing for the community, but they can't not talk about making money in one single video. And they'll send you to their website even if they don't have freaking product available, just to get you there because they need the traffic there. That is a very personal gain thing, and I get it. Once again, please go down in the comments and tell me why, I'm wrong. And I'm sure I can make the same argument that you guys are going to make. But please remember, this is the greed video. This is going to get tons of downvotes, this video. But listen, we got to talk about the greed. This is what the video is about. Greed, greed, greed. Sorry. But the only reason, all the things that I mentioned earlier in this video, the only reason it works is because people are able to make money in every single step of that process. And I'm going to go tell you guys a story. It was either freshman or sophomore year in college. I took an economics class. And in this economics class, they talked about a $5 clock radio from Walmart. I'll never forget this video. It's one of the most educational, like, borderline YouTube videos I ever watched in school. All they talk about is a $5 clock radio from Walmart. That clock radio took some engineer in China to design it, took rare earth materials for like the electrical inside and the solder and, the small pieces of metal, the screws and all that stuff was rare earth materials. Then they had the melt down plastic, which is petroleum. It had to be assembled in a factory, put together by people getting paid. It then had to be put onto a truck, and that product was then shipped to probably like a major actual shipping center. Like, we're talking ships like that sail on the ocean. They were loaded into cargo containers, put onto a ship, went across the Pacific Ocean, arrived in California to one of the major ports. Some union crane operator was paid to take that, Connex box off that cargo ship, loaded onto a tractor trailer truck. That tractor trailer truck then drove that $5 clock radio to a distribution center. That distribution center then sent that clock radio into other trucks throughout the country, into other distribution centers, till eventually it made it into the back room at your local Walmart. Then they paid some floor stocker to go take that clock radio from the back room, load it onto the shelf. Then you came, you purchased that $5 clock radio, you walked it to the front of the store, you gave it to a cashier who was still getting paid to ring out your items. They rang it out, and you paid $5 for that clock radio. And you know what? Every single step of that process that I just listed to you, someone made money. There wasn't a single step in that process where somebody lost money. From the people mining the rare materials, to the people drilling for the oil, for the petroleum, for the plastic, to the people shipping it, to the trucks, to the crane operator, to the bag boy, to the stock the store stock loader, and every single person in between. Everyone made money. And that's the problem we're running into with Pokemon, because it's very easy to constantly play this game of I buy product from one person, I sell it to another, they sell it to another, they sell it to another, and that person sells it to another until finally it ends. It's some way down the line, it gets into the hands of the final consumer, and every single person down the line makes money. So you know what I want you to do at the end of this video? If you're tired of the greed, I want you to go to Walmart, go buy yourself a $5 clock radio, bring it outside in a parking lot, and smash it. Probably make you feel a lot better. But anyways, made it to the end of this video. You are the absolute best. You're the reason I do these videos. Please hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. I'll catch you on the next video.